Good evening. Thank you so much for joining me tonight for Wednesday Word. I just want to speak with you briefly from First Kings chapter 18, verse 25 through 46. But I'm not going to read it all. I'm going to skip through because if I read it all, it might make the Wednesday Word too long for you all. All right, so let me start with First Kings 18th chapter, verse 25. Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose one of the bulls and prepare it first, since there are so many of you. Call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire. 26. So they took the bull given them and prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. Baal, answer us, they shouted, but there was no response. No one answered, and they danced around the altar they had made. 27. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them. Shout louder, he said. Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened. 28. So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. 29. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for their evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered, and no one paid attention. 30. Then Elijah said to all the people, come here to me. They came to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. 31. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, your name shall be Israel. With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it, large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. 33. He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then he said to them, fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood. 34. Do it again, he said, and they did it again. Do it a third time, he ordered, and they did it a third time. 35. The water ran down around the altar and even filled the trench. 36. At the time of the sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. 37. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and you are turning their hearts back again. 38. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. When all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, the Lord, he is God, the Lord, he is God. 40. Then Elijah commanded them, seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let anyone get away. They seized them, and Elijah and them brought down to the Kishon Valley and brought them down to the Kishon Valley and slaughtered there. And I think I'll stop there because 41 through 46 kind of gives a different message that maybe I'll do. Maybe the Lord will say, let me do this for next week. So for this one, this started at 25 and it went to 40. And 40, I kind of messed up when I read it, so let me read it again. Number 40, then Elijah commanded them, seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let anyone get away. They seized them, and Elijah had them brought down to Kishon Valley and slaughtered there. So in this particular part of the Bible, Elijah is proving that God is God. The folks have a counterfeit God. That counterfeit word has been kind of going around nowadays, but this is a counterfeit God that they are worshiping instead of God. And the real God, they have torn down the altar of God and they have started to worship Baal. And so Elijah is proving the point to them that there's only one God, but he does it with this competition. And so he tells them, go ahead and put your little altar together and let's see how your God comes through for you. And so all day, from morning till noon, and then and then it gets into the evening time, the altar does not, the God doesn't come through. Baal doesn't come through for them. And so at 27, Elijah is taunting them. He's like, shout louder, surely your God hears you. Perhaps though, if you are shout a little bit louder, maybe he's deep in thought or busy or traveling, and so you got to shout louder so he'll hear you better. Maybe he's asleep, and your louder shouts will awaken him. So they shouted louder, and they even slashed their hands and they slashed their bodies so that the blood would flow, and that still didn't move their God. The midday passed, and then we get to the evening, and there was no response. And so in 30, that's when Elijah tells them, okay, you had your chance. Let me show you what my God can do. And so he repairs the altar that had been torn down, the one that was for the real God. And then he puts 12 stones representing the 12 tribes of Israel. So he's putting all these things that mean something to God. These are promises. These are God's people that God had promised certain things to. This is the line of the promised family, all of the things that are in our history of discipleship. These people mean something to us. And so he was putting all of that on the altar. So everything is on the line, so to speak. You know, when people say something like, I'm going to call my ancestors, I'm going to call this, and I'm putting everything on the line. So he's got his God on the line, bringing the 12 stones representing the descendants from Jacob. He's calling the name of God. He is arranging the wood, put the pieces of the bull there. And then he's even ratcheting up the competition by having 4 large jars of water poured on there. And then going back and they're going to do it again. And then doing it again. So basically, I'm thinking this is 12. It's 12 units based on that was 4 large, and then he did it 3 times. So it's basically 12 large jars that were poured onto this particular altar, to the point that it was so soaking wet it even filled the trench. There's no reason that a fire should have started. But we see that in verse 38, the fire of the Lord burns up the sacrifice. And even it says, licked up the water in the trench. The fire was so hot that it consumed and all of the water, even the water in the draining area, the trench of the altar. So what this shows us and should remind us is that God is going to come through for us. It doesn't matter that people are pouring water on us over and over and over again. God is going to come through for us because we're not serving a counterfeit God. God cannot be shown up. He's not going to be put to the side with an altar that's torn up, even in a church, even if it's a church of God that has put the real God to the side to have a counterfeit God that they're all dancing around and thinking that that's going to save them. That does not move God in a positive way. That moves God in a negative way, because we see in 40 that Elijah says, seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let anyone get away. They seized them, and Elijah had them brought down to that valley and slaughtered. There's no way to get around that God is God, and there is only one, and no counterfeit will ever show up the real God. I hope that you understand that and you are worshiping the correct God, the accurate God. And if you have not decided to give your life to God and not give your obedience to the counterfeit God, we need you to work on that right away. I hope that you have a wonderful evening, and thank you so much for joining me tonight for Wednesday Word. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.